Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Debatable Discussions podcast. Today we've got a very actual episode, very current episode. What will we be discussing, John?
So yes, as you described there, Diane, today we will be discussing, firstly, Robert Jenrick's shock defection over to Reform UK from the Conservative Party, a party which he'd been an MP for over a decade. And then secondly, we'll discuss a bit of Iran and a bit of Trump, as he seems to appear everywhere in politics always. But Diane, I think firstly to set the scene, we should perhaps describe what has happened in UK politics, as
Yeah.
Robert Jenrick has marked a seismic transition, a seismic shift in current British politics by moving to Reform UK. I mean, Robert Jenrick is the ultimate traitor, many are saying, because of this defection. Kemi Badenoch has said he lacks credibility. He's this man who's gone to the dark side. But perhaps Jenrick's got a motive. So, for all our listeners, Robert Jenrick on Thursday, the 15th of January, defected from the Conservative Party to Reform UK. Jenrick had been a prominent figure in the Conservative Party for quite a time, especially since the Conservatives entered opposition. So he ran to become the leader of the opposition, the head of the Conservative Party, but lost out to Kemi. And since then, he's been Lord Chancellor, and he's actually perhaps captured the UK electorate in a way that Kemi hasn't. The reason for that being because of his videos on social media. I think he's got several which have got over 1 million or 2 million views. He's done things like stop fare evaders, stop delinquents, and it's really helped boost the Conservative Party's image in a time where they've perhaps been lacking. So, Diane, what do you think about about this seismic and prominent event in British politics?
Yeah, no, I think I think Robert Jenrick has sort of thrown his career in the bin, in my opinion. I think reform will always be reform's backbone will always be Nigel Farage. I
Yeah.
don't see a world where Nigel Farage is not going to be the leader of reform until he retires, and that's not happened for a while. I think I just don't understand this move. I just don't understand it. It seems to me so rushed, so not like. To me, it seems he hasn't actually sat down and considered the impact on his career of this decision, and he's only looked at this. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to defect. I'm going to probably. I don't think he'll keep his job as Shadow Chancellor. By the way, I think he'll get demoted.
Oh,
Maybe. Well, yeah, I think maybe. Well, demoted in the sort of maybe foreign secretary or something like that. Hopefully they win the election. They don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Let's say they will. He's never going to move out from foreign secretary. Never.
yeah. I mean, maybe. I think.
But
Yeah.
if he's stuck with the Tories after the next election, let's be honest, Kemi's out. It's going to be a shocking result. She's out. He was always there in the pipeline, ready to take over. Leader of the opposition, probably not, but the leader of the Tory party, and then could have revigorated it, brought in a fresh perspective, and maybe built for the next election. So in about 8 years' time, he could either be leader of the opposition or prime minister. I mean, it just feels such a rushed decision. Going and defecting for a job in government in 2 years, out of which you can't really progress much, because honestly, Nigel Farage is not going to appoint Robert Jenrick as Prime Minister. We need to be very honest about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's two things here. There's the rushed aspect and his motivations, and perhaps Jenrick was rushed. I don't think he expected it to be leaked fully, but the reports have been is that Jenrick definitely in December knew he was going to defect to reform. So he's known for at least a month, people are saying. Farage had described that they've had many, many calls. So Jenrick's known for a while, but I think he probably wasn't planning for it to come out in January. He was planning for it to come out a while. And actually, on Sunday, so this happened on a Thursday, but on the Sunday before, Badenoch phoned Robert Jenrick and said, there are all these rumours, are you defecting? He said no. But then actually, before it happened, only a few days before, he went to a dinner with Conservative Party members and donors at the Ivy near London Bridge. And there he apparently played the happy act. He said, didn't act at all like he was going to defect or reform, which perhaps suggests he was going to wait a few months. But then it was apparently sort of an open secret. It's been largely blamed to just serial carelessness in Jenrick's team, apparently in the pubs and offices of Southwest One to Westminster. His staff, effectively, or a member of his staff, has been saying that Jenrick was going to defect. So he was clearly betrayed within his circle. But I think his motivations are interesting because Jenrick will know that he's not going to be prime minister at the next election. And
or ever.
That's true with the Tories. And yeah, I think he definitely abandons his chance of leadership for the next decade. But then perhaps Kemi was always going to keep him as Lord Chancellor. Perhaps Nigel will offer Jenrick something like Chancellor of the Exchequer or Foreign Secretary, a higher post, to give him more authority. And Kemi may not have done that, I think. And I don't think she would have, because as he is her main opposition, you can imagine that she wouldn't have wanted to make him too central. But perhaps Farage can put Jenrick in a high place. And I think Farage would. He would make him Chancellor or Foreign Secretary, because Jenrick will be one of the few people in Farage's team that has ministerial experience, that has experience being an MP at a high level and at a ministerial cabinet level. And that's what Farage lacks. And this is what Tim Shipman, a famous political writer, was saying when he's writing, is that for Farage, it can be a win way, because Farage has wanted experienced people who have knowledge of how to implement and govern well. And Jenrick could fulfill that. So I think for Jenrick, perhaps in career, it's not over. Perhaps he's abandoned this idea of being prime minister, or at least he will have to be for the next decade or so. But then one has to consider his own seat. Jenrick's seat had a narrow majority, and it would have looked like Reform, if there was an election, would have probably won the seat. So he may have thought about his seat, which is Newark, as well as his career ambitions. Clearly, Jenrick thinks he can get a big job in Reform. So yes. But what do you think, Diane? Do you think, who are the winners and losers of this? Has Kemi won in a way, or has she solely lost? Or is it a mixture? Have they both won a bit, but also lost a bit, perhaps? Badenoch and Farage.
I think the biggest winner at the moment is, honestly, Keir Starmer.
Oh, yeah.
I think Keir Starmer is the biggest winner from this situation. I mean, let's look at it from this way. As someone who's not very much sympathizer of Reform UK, I've just say it mildly, I don't think this is a win for them. I think it kind of betrays their base a little bit. Their base is sort of, we're not with them. We're new. We've not been in power. You know, they've messed up the country. We're going to come and fix it. And now you're bringing all these people who have actually messed up the country quite actively with their previous positions and roles. And you're bringing them in your team. So I think they betrayed their base a little bit. I don't think it'll be that big of an impact, though, because the large majority of Reform voters are so brainwashed that they do not care. I think Kemi Badenoch is absolutely catastrophic for the Tories, because it just screams of desperation. Screams of desperation at the highest level in the party. The highest officials are desperate they're going to lose their seats, that they're going to have big electoral loss, that the party's going nowhere. This doesn't smell good. As a donor, as anything, even as a sympathizer of the Tory party, this does not look good to you. And it makes you want to sort of evaluate your options. Where do you go? What do you do? Because at the moment, this is a sinking ship. It just looks like Jenrick managed to figure out just the right time to depart the ship before he's going to drown with it. Now, again, I also think he's lost a little bit, though, because a lot of people are putting him in this sort of role of being the new face of the Tory party, maybe, and sort of being this bit of a fresh figure on social media and a bit more modern in his approach and everything. But he's just betrayed all of that again. Yeah. This is the same guy who, like a year and a half ago, was saying, I wouldn't like Farage to run my kid's school.
Yeah.
Farage is not the type of guy I want to run my country. And now he's sort of done this defection out of what? out of desperation. Doesn't look good for him either. If it's personal brand, I think it's not in a good place.
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting there because Robert Jenrick's defection does show that the Conservative Party is a sinking ship. He wanted to get out before he'd have drowned,
Yeah.
perhaps, as you said there. And so I think it shows the fairly dismal future for the Conservative Party. There's been an argument that it sort of perhaps it solidifies Kemi's control because having MPs who want to defect isn't the best. But it's fairly dismal for the Tories.
Yeah, it's not great.
I think there is a benefit for Farage. He gets a lot of experience with Jenrick. Jenrick's got experience, knowledge of politics at a high level. Even though he is a betrayer, one could say that a lot of these Reform Party MPs are people who were pretty much all former Tories.
But yeah, again, I think it's just the question of...
It's slightly Hippocratic, but
Yeah.
one can say that the party is built of people who've betrayed the Tories. Even in a Hippocratic sense of they're the ones who could have made this situation in a way that they had to betray the Tories, even though they're partly responsible for the state of the country. But a key idea I thought you said as well, Diane, is actually related to a friend of the podcast, Ryan Wayne, who was one of the key innovators and key thinkers behind the idea of digital IDs, which was a major U-turn that Keir Starmer announced this week. And it would have looked, and it did look, but it would have looked even worse for the government of Keir Starmer, this U-turn, had Jenrick not defected, because it's fairly embarrassing that he's U-turned once again. It helps Keir get off a bit lighter in that sense, because Ryan Wayne, I saw him on Twitter saying how he was initially horrified, but then sort of saw that it wasn't a complete phase out of digital IDs, but nonetheless, a bit shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, digital IDs, discussed it previously in depth. I don't think they're a bad idea. Yeah. I think the same people who, again, I've made all my arguments before, but what is the case really is that Robert Jenrick, I think, with this move, has made a very, very strong signal to everyone. And that signal is that he doesn't have faith in the Tory leadership at the moment. But also, if I was Nigel Farage, I don't know if I'd like that kind of person, in my sort of most inner circle. Because if he left once, in the middle of the night, basically, which was what he was going to do, because if he didn't announce it, he was going to wait until the toughest moment and jump ship.
Yeah.
And if he does that once, then how do you know he's not going to do it again when every single Reform voter wakes up the 5th day after Reform won the election and realised that prices are still up, Brexit has still damaged the country, mass immigration and mass illegal immigration still occurs, and that Farage hasn't done a single thing to solve any of their problems. And not just that, they're going to understand, hopefully, that all these sort of made-up issues, immigration, this, that, digital ID, whatever, they're just made up. They're not real. They're not the big issues that people are facing.
But then in Farage's defence, I think he would argue that the reason why he probably will trust Jenrick is so he can have the best chance of solving those problems. Because it's similarly, in the same way he's welcomed Nadeem Zahawi, a former Tory Chancellor of the Exchequer, only brief, but nonetheless Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was a very efficient cabinet minister during COVID with his programme, the vaccine rollout. I personally probably still vote for the Conservatives over Reform on a more of an ideological basis, but I still nonetheless think that Reform UK, they are waking up slightly to this idea that they need to do well in government. Farage is trying to attract people who have experience in governance, especially from the Tories. He's hinted quite heavily towards a Labour figure joining Reform. I don't know if this would be an MP or a councillor, but if it was to be an MP, that would signal something far more significant. So I think it's an interesting situation for Reform. I think Farage is clearly thinking as if he will win the next election because he wants a plan for governance and a plan to create a strong government. And clearly Jenrick's in that position. Yeah. But what do you think about this, Dan, before we sort of transition over to Iran.
Yeah, again, I think, he's thinking about the next election, and it's easier to defend the seat than win it.
Yeah.
So, he's been trying to get the right people, but again, I don't know. I'm definitely not a reform voter, but if I was, I would feel very much betrayed by this sort of thing that we're doing of, oh, Labour and the Tories destroyed the UK, but I'm going to get all ex-Labour and Tory people to join Reform.
Yeah.
Like, how does that make sense? 1+1 does not equal 3. But again, it's a very tough time for a lot of people. So are they
Yeah.
actually going to care? Probably not.
Yeah. I suppose it is a paradoxical nature of reform in that they're relying on people who are arguably responsible for the state that Britain is in to fix Britain.
Yeah.
But then the members are the same. They're people who supported parties that perhaps didn't do the best. Yes. But transitioning across the European landmass, Diane, there's the other major political developments this week have occurred in Iran. Notably, these protests against their supreme leader, of which Trump has almost made the world teeter on the edge of warfare, especially with his threats to intervene, which I think for a second definitely had everyone, it had sort of me thinking there could be some pretty drastic consequences next, especially in light of what happened in Venezuela,
Yeah.
threats in Greenland. So what do you think about this situation in Iran involving Trump and Ayatollah Khamenei?
Yeah, I think, very interesting. I think Ayatollah Khamenei, again, he's been the longest serving dictator that exists at the moment in the world.
Very well, yeah.
You don't become the longest serving dictator by being sloppy or by making mistakes. That doesn't happen. Someone gets you in your own country, or someone from another country gets you at the end. But they haven't been able to get Ayatollah Khamenei because he has been very careful. He's been very sort of calculated in his decision, in his approach, and in how he's handled Iran. I mean, look, do I think Trump's going to do anything? Honestly, no, I don't, because again, I think Ayatollah Khamenei is smart enough to be able to do anything. And the big thing, though, isn't that, I don't think, John. I think that there are two bigger issues than what Trump is going to do. And that is, are we going to have an actual Iranian revolution?
Yeah.
I think that is the bigger moment. Because Ayatollah Khamenei can do whatever, to escape international fury and so do these deals and stuff. But he can't do anything if 1 million people in Tehran wake up tomorrow and start going and barging his palace, So, maybe that will happen, and then Iran can have a democracy, or the Reza Pahlavi can return. Also,
Yeah.
if he watches this episode, do
Yes.
accept our invitation, and we look forward to seeing you in an interview soon. But also, what is Benjamin Netanyahu doing? That is the real question. He's been advocating for, destroy Iran for years. This is the biggest threat for Israel. What is he doing? Where is he?
Yeah, I think you make some very good points there. And the thing one must remember is that Venezuela didn't really retaliate at all against Trump
Yes.
when Trump abducted their leader. American intervention in Iran would end up a very different way. They've pretty directly said to Trump that if you attack us, that US base in Qatar's gone. And similarly, I think they would show quite a strong attitude towards aggression. And I think Trump recognizes that because he has slightly backed out. He's slightly retreated, partly because the Iranian government is totally irrational, but they've said that they'll sort of slow down the executions or stop. I don't know if that holds actually any weight, probably doesn't at all, but that's what they've said. And that sort of example of appeasement there shows that they do feel threatened by Trump. But nonetheless, I think that we could be experiencing the new we had the Arab Spring in 2011. We were too young to remember, but that was a series of revolutions that occurred across that part of the world against dictatorial regimes. And I think it could happen in Iran. It's clear that people are very frustrated with the current system, and that there is a huge appetite for reform. Yesterday, I was actually having a discussion similar to this about what makes a successful revolution. And he sort of came up with many ideas, such as you need a strong military, a sort of centralized power. You need to be able to mobilize the masses. You need to be able to be very organized once you have taken power. And those ideas of what can make a successful revolution, they may not apply to Iran in short term to the issue. I think I do honestly think there's a chance of an Iranian revolution, but I think it's probably slightly further down the line. It is almost a situation which will happen in a year or two where an organized militia or group will strongly go against Ayatollah Khamenei. Yeah.
I think, I agree with you. I think, it's much more likely to have a Syria-esque.
Yeah.
Where you've got this militia led by someone. But honestly, John, that could happen tomorrow. I mean,
yeah,
you just never know, because if there is a huge uprising and they could do this very disorganized revolution where they storm Tehran, get Ayatollah Khamenei, shoot him in the head, in the back, in national TV or in front of a million people, that can happen.
Yeah.
After what happens, that's another question.
Yeah.
And, maybe someone else will take over, or we'll see. It's very hard to say. But I think it's such an unstable time. And again, for me, I'm getting a bit worried because Benjamin Netanyahu isn't doing anything. And to me, that's not good news. For a lot of people, that Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing anything is good news. I fully disagree. I think he's planning something, because I just don't buy this whole narrative that no, Bibi Netanyahu has decided that he's going to be a pacifist and not get involved in Iran. Come on, really? Something's definitely happening under the radar, which we don't know. And the moment that gets out, I think is going to completely shift the balance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, perhaps Netanyahu. But I think nonetheless, Trump. I think Iran will become increasingly. It already is very cut off. But Trump's threatened economic sanctions. I think the international community will get quite oppressive towards Iran, rightly.
Yeah.
And perhaps that will fuel this appetite for revolution there. But nonetheless, I mean, it's still shocking and horrifying to see that. I think during the course of these protests, there have been 2.5 thousand deaths, even with Trump asking for them not to happen. Similarly, these people that they said they won't execute now because of this international pressure have apparently just got delayed execution warrants and things. So it's unfortunate that the situation there isn't shifting in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line for me is Khamenei's got to go.
Yeah. That's what needs to happen, frankly.
He's got to go. But again, he's got to go is very different from let's go in and kidnap him in the middle of the night in his Nike tech suit. What I'd prefer is for Iranian revolution, maybe just how there were the communist revolutions in the 1980s and the sort of 1989, 88, and the 90s.
And yeah, this is a key idea mentioned there with revolutions, which historians find, is that after the revolution has occurred, it's about establishing a power base, establishing a political system that's concrete enough and stable enough to ensure the longevity of the new regime. It could be an example of the American Revolution. They won independence against the British, had the Articles of the Confederation, but then it was events like the Constitutional Convention in 1787 in which they were trying to actually, this breakaway colony of North America, to establish a political base. And that's, I think, perhaps what's gone wrong in Syria, which is a recent event. It's become slightly unstable there. Yes. So we hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you are still listening and watching, and we hope you still are, please do hit the subscribe button, like, comment, follow us wherever you're listening, and follow us on social media. We post lots of updates, lots of clips across Instagram, X or Twitter, TikTok, as well as YouTube Shorts. We're very keen on, and in the coming weeks, probably, or perhaps months, I think Dan will hit 100,000 views overall on YouTube. So if you are listening on YouTube or watching, thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you next week.
See you there.